I was making dinner when a police officer knocked on my door. "Sir, your wife died in a car crash an hour ago." That couldn't be true. She was upstairs sleeping. The officer looked uneasy as I led him to the bedroom. Then he pulled his gun. "Sir," he said, "step back. That's not your wife." I thought I was a man who saw everything, a predator in the business world. But the day I realized my wife and my closest partner were meticulously planning to steal every cent I had and erase her from my life, that's when my world didn't just crumble, it turned into a battlefield, and I was ready to unleash hell. You know that feeling when you're on top of the world? That was me. Marco Christian. 42 years old, standing in my Seattle corner office, watching the city shimmer. I wasn't just good at business, I was a destroyer. I built Christian Industries from absolutely nothing after my own father walked out when I was barely 20. While other kids were playing video games, I was working, studying, planning. By 30, I was a millionaire. By 35, I married Jenny. She was beautiful, impressive. We had Casey, our daughter, bought the mansion. Everything was perfect. Or so I thought. Then, my intercom buzzed. "Sir, your wife called about dinner tonight." My jaw tightened. Barely perceptible, but it was there. Jenny. My wife of 16 years. The mother of my daughter, Casey. The woman who once looked at me like I hung the moon. Now, she was just a calendar appointment. A chill went down my spine. Success, I realized, had bred complacency, and complacency, I was about to learn, bred betrayal. My phone buzzed. A text from Wesley Stratton, my business partner. "Emergency meeting tomorrow. Henderson contract." Wesley. 6 feet tall, charming smile, the kind of guy I'd seen potential in, given him 40% of my expanded business. My friend. That night, I walked into our kitchen. Jenny was wearing this little black dress. Too perfect for a quiet dinner at home. "You look beautiful," I said, kissing her cheek. She tensed, just a little. "How was your day?" Her voice, though, it had this forced cheerfulness that grated on my nerves. "Productive," I told her, watching her closely. "Wesley mentioned an issue with Henderson. Are you familiar with that client?" Something flickered in her eyes. "No. Should I be?" she said, too quickly. "Just curious," I replied. "You seem to know more about my business lately than you used to." Then Casey bounded in, her blonde hair bouncing, just like her mom's. "Dad, can I sleep over at Melissa Connor's house this weekend?" Melissa Connor. Her dad was a police officer. "New at school," she said. "Nice." I looked at my daughter, still innocent at 14. Still believed the world was fair, that her parents loved each other. "We'll see," I said, ruffling her hair. During dinner, my eyes were glued to Jenny. She checked her phone 3 times, trying to hide it. Then, when she excused herself to the bathroom, she took her purse. And her phone. After Casey went to bed, I sat in my study, a glass of Macallan in hand. I'd built an empire on information. I knew my rivals' weaknesses, my competitors' financial records. But I'd been blind in my own home. The next morning, I called Gerald. My younger brother, a private investigator in Portland. We hadn't spoken in months, not since he'd criticized my work obsession. "I need you to look into something," I said. "Straight to business, always." "My wife," discreetly. "And Wesley Stratton." There was a pause. "Marco, are you sure you want to go down this road?" "Just do it." 3 days later, Gerald sat across from me in my study. A manila folder lay between us like a loaded weapon. "You're not going to like this," he said, his voice heavy with regret. I opened it. Photos spilled out. Jenny and Wesley. At a hotel. Kissing in his car. Entering an apartment I didn't recognize. 8 months, the timestamps showed. It had been going on for 8 months. "There's more," Gerald added quietly. "They're planning something." He'd followed Wesley to a meeting with a guy named Tommy Travis, someone connected to creating new identities, false documents. My fingers drummed against the desk. The only sign of the earthquake of rage building inside me. "Go on." "I think they're planning to disappear together. Wesley's been slowly liquidating assets, converting them to cryptocurrency." "And Jenny?" Gerald hesitated. "She's been photographing documents from your home office. Your insurance policies, business contracts, offshore accounts." Everything worth stealing. I stood, walked to my safe, pulled out files. They'd been moved. Just slightly. So subtle, most people would never see it. But I noticed everything. How much, I asked, my voice chillingly calm, does Wesley have access to, between his partnership share and what Jenny's feeding him? Potentially everything. Your entire fortune. I laughed then, a cold, empty sound. My wife thinks she can betray me and walk away rich with my business partner? No. Gerald shifted uncomfortably. Marco, you can divorce her. Cut Wesley out of the business. No. My voice cut through the air like a blade. They've declared war on me. And in war, the only acceptable outcome is total victory. Over the next week, I kept my routine. Normal. But I was gathering intelligence. Hidden cameras in the house. A tech expert monitoring Jenny's phone and computer. Wesley followed around the clock. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd imagined. They weren't just planning to rob me blind, they'd recruited help. Ivan Graham, my accountant for 6 years, was in on it, helping Wesley hide assets. Their plan was chillingly simple. Jenny would fake her own death in a car accident. An enormous insurance payout. With me devastated, Wesley would gradually transfer business assets offshore. By the time anyone figured it out, the 3 of them would be living comfortably in some non-extradition country. They saw a successful businessman, softened by age and wealth. They didn't see the 12-year-old boy who swore no one would ever abandon or betray him again. My plan began to form. Not just to stop them, but to destroy them so completely that their betrayal would serve as a lesson. For anyone who dared cross me. My first move was to contact Melissa Connor. Not Casey's friend's mom, but a former military police officer turned private security consultant. Small, blonde, deceptively innocent looking. Perfect. I need someone who can play dead convincingly, I told her over coffee. Melissa raised an eyebrow. That's an unusual request, Mr. Christian. I'm willing to pay $50,000 for 1 day's work. I'm listening. I gave her a carefully edited version. My wife was faking her death to steal my money, and I wanted to turn the tables. So, you want me to pretend to be your wife's body? Exactly. You'll be the victim of a car accident. A medical examiner who owes me a favor will declare you dead. My wife, meanwhile, will be safely secured elsewhere, very much alive. Watching her perfect plan crumble. Melissa studied me. And then what? Then she faces the consequences of her choices. Next, I manipulated my own security system. Modified the surveillance equipment so I controlled what was recorded. Had a secret room built in the basement, soundproof, climate-controlled, comfortable. For a long stay, Wesley played right into my hands. When he learned I was reviewing all business partnerships at the end of the month, he suggested they accelerate their timeline. The car accident is set for this Friday, he told Jenny during a phone call I was monitoring. Tommy has everything arranged. You crash the car, I create the scene, you slip away. By the time anyone figures out the body isn't yours, we'll be long gone. But I had already intercepted Tommy Travis, offering him double what Wesley was paying. Now Tommy worked for me, ready to execute a very different plan. Friday morning. Gray and rainy. Jenny kissed me with lips that felt like ice. I'll see you tonight, she said. Her last lie. I spent the day putting the final pieces in place. Ivan Graham's office was searched. Evidence of embezzlement was found, enough to send him to prison. Wesley's apartment was bugged, his communications monitored. At 4 p.m., the call came. It's done, Tommy said. Your wife's car is wrapped around a tree on Highway 18. But don't worry, she never touched the steering wheel. Instead, Jenny Christian was unconscious in the back of Tommy's van, drugged during what she thought was a final meeting. She would wake up in my basement, very much alive, completely at my mercy. Meanwhile, Melissa Connor lay in the wreckage of Jenny's car, positioned to hide her face, waiting for the police. I smiled, put on my most grief-stricken expression, headed home to play the devastated widower. The real performance was about to begin. I was in the kitchen, setting the table for our anniversary dinner, when the knock came. Officer Bruce Jackson stood at the door, his uniform crisp. Behind him, a younger officer with sympathetic eyes. Mr. Christian, I'm Officer Jackson with the Bellevue Police Department. My face immediately showed concern. Is everything all right, officer? Sir, I'm afraid I have some very difficult news. Your wife was in a fatal car accident an hour ago. My perfectly crafted expression of shock and disbelief would have won an Academy Award. My face went pale. My hand gripped the door frame. My voice cracked perfectly. No, that's impossible. She's upstairs asleep. She had a headache and went to lie down. Officer Jackson exchanged a glance with his partner. Sir, I understand this is difficult, but we found her vehicle wrapped around a tree on Highway 18. The medical examiner has confirmed no. My voice carried just the right note of desperate denial. She's here. She's upstairs in our bedroom. I'll show you. I led them through the house, my steps urgent, desperate. A flawless performance. A man clinging to hope against impossible odds. Jenny. I called out as we climbed the stairs. Jenny, wake up. There are police officers here with some mistake about you being in an accident. The master bedroom door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, letting them see first. On the bed, under the covers, was a feminine form. Blonde hair spread across the pillow, face turned away. See? My voice was thick with relief and vindication. She's right here. She's just sleeping. But as we approached the bed, Officer Jackson's hand instinctively moved to his weapon. He'd seen enough crime scenes to recognize something wrong. Sir, he said, his voice carefully controlled. Step away from her. The figure wasn't breathing, wasn't moving. Jackson drew his weapon. His partner followed suit. Sir, step back now. My expression shifted again. From relief to confusion to dawning horror. Another perfect performance. What's wrong? What are you doing? Jackson approached the bed, his gun trained. He reached out to check for a pulse. His hand found cold, waxy skin. It was a mannequin. A life-sized, incredibly realistic mannequin, dressed in Jenny's clothes, wearing her jewelry, with a blonde wig styled exactly like her hair. Mr. Christian, Jackson said, his voice now official and cold. I need you to put your hands where I can see them and tell me where your wife really is. My performance shifted once more. Now I was a confused, grieving husband who couldn't understand what was happening. I don't understand. She was here when I went downstairs. She was sleeping right here. Sir, this is a mannequin. Where is your wife? I don't know. She was here. Someone took her. My voice rose with panic that seemed entirely genuine. In the basement, 30 feet below where they stood, Jenny Christian was waking up in my specially prepared room. Soundproof walls, steel door. No way out except through me. She would wake to find herself in a comfortable but inescapable prison, with a monitor showing her exactly what was happening upstairs. Watching her husband give the performance of a lifetime, while her lover and co-conspirators waited for news of her death. The trap was sprung. Now, the real game could begin. Jenny's consciousness returned slowly, like swimming up through dark water. Her head pounded, her mouth was dry. She was on a comfortable bed in a room she'd never seen. Cream walls, carpet, a small bathroom, even a kitchenette. Like a luxury hotel, except for one crucial detail, no windows. And the door was reinforced steel. A large flat-screen TV flickered to life, showing my face. Not the Marco she knew, but a haggard, desperate man pleading with police officers. She was here. His voice came through the speakers. Someone must have taken her. Jenny's blood turned to ice. This was live footage from their bedroom, where a mannequin lay motionless on their bed. Another camera angle showed Officer Jackson interrogating me in the living room. Mr. Christian, your wife's car was found in a fatal accident. The body at the scene has been identified as Jenny Christian, but now you're claiming she was kidnapped from your bedroom. I know how it sounds, I said, my voice breaking convincingly. But I'm telling you the truth. She was sleeping upstairs when you arrived. Jenny's hands shook as the full scope of what was happening hit her. The car accident. The fake death. Wesley waiting for her to escape. None of it had gone to plan. Marco knew. Marco had known all along. The intercom crackled to life in her room. Hello, darling. My voice calm, controlled. Nothing like the desperate man on the screen. I trust you're feeling better. You were unconscious for quite a while. Marco, she whispered, then louder, Marco, what have you done? I've given you exactly what you wanted, Jenny. You wanted to disappear, to leave your old life behind. Consider this your fresh start. Let me out of here. I'm afraid that's not possible. You see, according to the world, Jenny Christian died in a car accident this afternoon. There's even a body to prove it. Well, close enough for the initial investigation. On the screen, she watched Wesley's BMW pull into their driveway. He got out, his face a mask of concern and grief, ready to play the supportive business partner. Wesley's here, I continued through the intercom. He's come to comfort me in my time of grief. Isn't that touching? The same man who's been sleeping with my wife has come to offer his condolences. Jenny watched in horror as Wesley embraced me at the front door. Both men playing their roles perfectly. Wesley had no idea his lover was very much alive and watching from her underground prison. You're insane, Jenny said. I'm thorough, I corrected. Did you really think you could steal 16 years of my life, rob me blind, and just walk away? Did you think I'd never find out about the offshore accounts, the false identities, the insurance fraud? Wesley was now in the living room, talking to the police. Marco, I can't believe this happened. If there's anything I can do, he doesn't know, does he? My voice held dark amusement. Wesley still thinks you're dead. Still thinks his plan worked perfectly. He's probably wondering why he hasn't heard from you yet, but he'll assume you're being cautious, waiting for the heat to die down. This is kidnapping murder. They'll figure it out. Will they? The police have a body, a car accident, a grieving husband who clearly had nothing to do with it since he was home preparing dinner. Wesley will provide my alibi. He spoke to me an hour before the accident. Can confirm I was home cooking. The camera showed Gerald Christian arriving at the house. My brother, there to provide family support. Jenny had always liked Gerald. Thought he was the more reasonable one. Even Gerald's playing his part, I said, as if reading her thoughts. He's quite the actor when properly motivated. Gerald's helping you? Gerald understands family loyalty. Something you never learned. Over the next 2 hours, Jenny watched a parade of people come to offer condolences. Neighbors, business associates, even Casey's friends' parents. Everyone believed Jenny Christian was dead. And they all witnessed my grief-stricken performance. Casey herself was at her friend Melissa Connor's house, conveniently away from the chaos, being told the devastating news by phone. Our daughter, Jenny said. You're letting her think I'm dead. Our daughter will be fine. Better than fine. She'll inherit everything that would have been yours, plus the insurance money. She'll be very wealthy, and she'll never know her mother was a cheating thief. Marco, please. The real question, I interrupted, is what happens to you now? You wanted a new identity, a fresh start. I'm prepared to give you that, but it won't be the comfortable retirement in Costa Rica you were planning with Wesley. On the screen, Wesley was saying goodbye to me, promising to help with funeral arrangements. The concern in his eyes looked almost genuine. He's good, I said. I'll give him that. If I didn't know better, I'd almost believe he actually cared about you. As the police and visitors finally left, Jenny watched me close the front door and slump against it, dropping the grief-stricken mask for the first time all day. The smile that spread across my face was cold and predatory. I looked directly into the camera. Phase 1 complete, I said. Now the real fun begins. 3 days after Jenny's death, Wesley Stratton sat in his downtown Seattle office, staring at his encrypted phone. No messages from Jenny. No confirmation she'd reached the safe house Tommy Travis had arranged. Nothing. She should have contacted him by now. Her silence was starting to eat at him. A knock on his door. I stood there, looking haggard and hollow-eyed, the picture of a grieving widower. Marco, Wesley said, standing quickly. You shouldn't be here. You should be home resting. I can't just sit in that house, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. Everything reminds me of her. I need to work. Need something to occupy my mind. Wesley nodded sympathetically, even as he mentally calculated how this could work to his advantage. A distracted, grieving Marco would be easier to manipulate. Of course, whatever you need. What Wesley didn't know was that I had been monitoring his communications for weeks. Every encrypted message, every phone call, every meeting with co-conspirators. I'd seen it all. In her underground prison, Jenny watched the interaction on her monitor, seeing Wesley's false concern for the husband of the woman he claimed to love. She'd been watching for 3 days now, seeing how easily he slipped into his role as the supportive friend. Quite the performance, my voice came through her intercom. I'm almost impressed by his acting ability. Almost. He doesn't know where I am, Jenny said. He thinks I escaped. Yes, he does. And that uncertainty is eating at him. Watch his hands. See how he keeps checking his phone. He's desperate for word from you. On the screen, Wesley was indeed fidgeting, stealing glances at his phone whenever he thought I wasn't looking. Marco, Wesley said carefully, I know this is difficult. But have you thought about the business? The Henderson contract still needs attention, and there are some financial decisions that can't wait. I trust you to handle it, I said. You've been such a good friend, Wesley. I don't know what I'd do without you. Wesley's smile was warm and genuine. Or it would have seemed genuine to anyone who didn't know what I knew. We'll get through this together, Wesley said. Jenny wouldn't want you to give up on everything you've built. You're right, I agreed. She'd want me to fight to keep building the empire we started together. That afternoon, my next move began. Ivan Graham, the accountant, received an unexpected visit from federal agents investigating financial irregularities. Mr. Graham, Agent Stephanie Hogan said, sitting across from Ivan in his office. We've received information suggesting that several business accounts have been manipulated over the past 6 months. Ivan's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because our forensic accountants have found a very interesting trail of transactions. Money moving between accounts, cryptocurrency purchases, offshore transfers. All traced back to companies you manage. Agent Hogan slid a folder across the desk. That's just the beginning. We've also found evidence suggesting you've been working with others to systematically drain assets from Christian industries. This is impossible. Ivan stammered. I would never. The evidence says otherwise. Now, you can cooperate with our investigation and help us understand who else is involved, or you can become the fall guy for the entire operation. Your choice. What Ivan didn't know was that Stephanie Hogan wasn't a federal agent at all. She was another of my hired actors, and the evidence was carefully constructed to look authentic while proving nothing illegal on my part. But the psychological pressure worked. Within an hour, Ivan was ready to confess everything, implicating Wesley Stratton as the mastermind. In her prison, Jenny watched security footage of Ivan's breakdown with growing horror. You're framing them, she said. I'm revealing their true nature, I corrected. Ivan was stealing from me. Wesley was planning to steal millions. I'm simply accelerating the timeline. They'll figure out those aren't real federal agents. Will they? By the time anyone thinks to verify Agent Hogan's credentials, Ivan will have already confessed to multiple felonies. And Wesley? Wesley will be so busy trying to cover his tracks that he won't notice the trap closing around him. That evening, Wesley received a panicked call from Ivan. They know everything. The feds. They have evidence about the accounts, about the money transfers. I think someone tipped them off. Wesley's blood ran cold. What did you tell them? Nothing yet, but they're coming back tomorrow with a warrant. Wesley, if they trace this back to you, calm down. Wesley said, though he was anything but calm himself. Let me think. But thinking was exactly what I wanted Wesley to do. Every moment Wesley spent worrying about the investigation was a moment he wasn't trying to contact Jenny or wondering why their perfect plan had gone silent. On her monitor, Jenny watched Wesley pace his apartment like a caged animal, making frantic phone calls to lawyers and checking his escape routes. He's abandoning you, I observed. The moment he thinks he might get caught, thoughts of rescuing you disappear entirely. That's the man you threw away 16 years of marriage for. Stop it. Look at him, Jenny. Really look. He's not trying to find you. He's not worried about your safety. He's only concerned about saving himself. As if to prove my point, Wesley's next call was to Tommy Travis, but not to ask about Jenny. Instead, he was demanding a new identity for himself, wanting to disappear immediately. My wife is dead, Jenny whispered, watching the man she'd risked everything for abandon her without a second thought. No, I said softly. Jenny Christian is dead. But you're something new. Now the question is, what do you want that something to be? The trap was working perfectly. Wesley was panicking, making mistakes, burning bridges in his desperate attempt to escape. And soon, I would spring the final phase of my revenge. The one that would destroy not just Wesley's life, but everything he'd ever hoped to build on the ruins of my marriage. 1 week after Jenny's supposed death, Wesley Stratton made his fatal mistake. Desperate to escape what he believed was a federal investigation, he accessed the hidden accounts containing the money he'd stolen from Christian Industries, unaware that I was monitoring every digital move he made. The moment Wesley began transferring funds to his escape account in the Cayman Islands, I struck. In her underground room, Jenny watched the security monitors as police cars surrounded Wesley's apartment building. But these weren't my hired actors. These were real Seattle Police Department officers armed with genuine warrants. How? She whispered. Wesley just moved $2.3 million in stolen funds across international borders, my voice explained through the intercom. That's federal wire fraud, money laundering, and theft. I simply provided the evidence to the appropriate authorities. On the screen, Officer Bruce Jackson, the same officer who'd responded to Jenny's accident, led the team that broke down Wesley's door. Wesley Stratton, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft, Jackson announced as Wesley was handcuffed in his pajamas. This is insane, Wesley shouted. I haven't done anything wrong. But the evidence was overwhelming. I had meticulously documented every illegal transaction, every stolen dollar, every false document. Wesley's own greed had provided the rope for his hanging. The beautiful part, I continued, is that in trying to escape with his stolen money, Wesley proved he's guilty of everything I'm accusing him of. No jury in the world will believe his claims of innocence. As Wesley was dragged away in handcuffs, Jenny noticed something that made her blood freeze. Standing in the crowd of onlookers was Gerald Christian, my brother. He was supposed to be providing family support during this difficult time. But Gerald wasn't watching Wesley's arrest with surprise or concern. He was watching with satisfaction, taking photos with his phone. Gerald was part of this from the beginning, Jenny realized. Gerald's been my eyes and ears for months, I confirmed. Every piece of evidence against Wesley, every detail about your affair, Gerald gathered it all. Family loyalty, Jenny. Something you never understood. The next visitor to arrive at the house was Casey, my 14-year-old daughter, returning from her extended stay at the Connor family home. Jenny watched through the monitors as Casey hugged me, both of us crying. Casey from grief. Me from what appeared to be relief at having my daughter home. Dad, I still can't believe Mom's really gone, Casey said, her voice breaking. I held her tightly. I know, sweetheart, but we'll get through this together. Your mother loved you more than anything in the world. Watching the scene, Jenny finally broke down completely. Her daughter was in agony, believing her mother was dead, while I comforted her with lies. The cruelty of it was staggering. Let me see her, Jenny pleaded through the intercom. Please, Marco, let me see Casey. Casey is mourning her mother, I replied coldly. Jenny Christian is dead, remember? You made that choice when you decided to fake your death and abandon her. I wasn't abandoning her. The plan was to bring her with me once everything settled down. The plan was to steal $50 million and disappear, leaving me and Casey to deal with the aftermath. Don't rewrite history now that you're caught. Jenny fell silent, because in her heart, she knew I was right. The plan had always been about escaping with Wesley. Casey had been an afterthought. Over the following days, Jenny was forced to watch as her carefully constructed life continued without her. Casey returned to school, treated with sympathy. I played the devoted single father, taking time off work. Meanwhile, Wesley's arrest had made headlines. Local business partner arrested in massive embezzlement scheme, read the Seattle Times. The article detailed how Wesley Stratton had allegedly stolen millions from Christian Industries. What it didn't mention, what no one except me knew, was that much of this stolen money had actually been moved by me, creating a paper trail that led directly to Wesley's accounts. You framed him, Jenny said during one of our daily conversations. I exposed him, I corrected. Wesley was stealing from me. Maybe not millions, but he was embezzling. The cryptocurrency accounts were real. The offshore transfers were real. I simply enhanced the evidence. Enhanced? You manufactured evidence. I documented his crimes. The fact that I moved some of my own money to make the case stronger doesn't change the fact that Wesley is a thief and a traitor. What about Ivan? Ivan's cooperating fully with authorities. He's provided detailed testimony about Wesley's embezzlement scheme in exchange for a reduced sentence. 5 years in minimum security instead of 20 in federal prison. He's quite grateful. Jenny realized with growing horror that I had orchestrated everything with surgical precision. Wesley would go to prison for decades. Ivan would serve his time. And I would emerge as the victim, the betrayed friend who'd lost both his wife and his business partner. And what about me? She asked. What's my role in this masterpiece? You, my dear, are the tragic victim whose death exposed their crimes. If you hadn't died in that car accident, Wesley might have stolen everything I owned. Your death saved the company, protected Casey's inheritance, and revealed the truth about the people I trusted. I'm not dead. Jenny Christian is dead. Her body was buried yesterday in a beautiful ceremony. Casey threw a rose on the casket, and I gave a eulogy about how much I loved my wife, despite her flaws. Jenny stared at the monitor in shock. She'd missed her own funeral, watching instead as I and Casey stood over an empty casket while friends and family paid their respects to a woman who was sitting in a basement room 20 feet away. You're completely insane, she whispered. I'm completely thorough, I replied. And now we come to the final act. Wesley will spend the next 30 years in prison. Ivan will serve his 5 years and disappear. Casey will inherit everything and never know her mother was a criminal. And you? What about me? You get to choose. I can make Jenny Christian's death permanent, a tragic accident that ended a beautiful marriage. Or you can live, but as someone else entirely. New identity, new life, new everything. But if you choose to live, you do so knowing that returning to your old life means destroying Casey's future and revealing that her beloved mother was a thief who faked her own death. The weight of the choice crushed down on Jenny like a physical force. She could expose my elaborate revenge and return to her daughter, but only by destroying Casey's image of her mother and implicating herself in Wesley's crimes. Or she could disappear forever, letting Casey believe her mother died, preserving her daughter's inheritance and innocence. Choose carefully, I said, because this is the only choice you'll get. 2 weeks after her supposed death, Jenny Christian made her decision. She requested a face-to-face meeting with me, the first time we would be in the same room since her imprisonment began. I entered her underground room, carrying a chair which I placed carefully across from where she sat on the bed. I looked different. Leaner, harder, as if the past month had stripped away any softness I'd once possessed. You look terrible, I observed clinically. 2 weeks in a basement prison will do that, Jenny replied. Despite everything, she couldn't help but notice that I looked better than I had in years. Revenge, apparently, agreed with me. Have you decided? I want to know something first. Why this elaborate scheme? Why not just divorce me, prosecute Wesley, and move on with your life? I leaned back in my chair, studying her as if she were a business problem to be solved. Because divorce would have given you half of everything I built. Because prosecuting Wesley would have made him a martyr to your affair. Because moving on would have meant accepting that you won. So, this is about winning. This is about justice. You and Wesley thought you could destroy my life and walk away rich. Instead, Wesley is in federal prison. Ivan is in witness protection, and you're sitting in a basement room, choosing between death and exile. What about Casey? Don't you care what this is doing to her? For the first time, something flickered in my eyes. Not regret, but a carefully controlled pain. Casey is better off believing her mother died than knowing her mother was a criminal. She'll inherit everything now, be raised by a father who actually loves her, and never have to learn that the woman who gave birth to her was willing to abandon her for money. I wasn't abandoning her. The plan was to steal $50 million and disappear to a non-extradition country. Don't insult my intelligence by claiming you were going to send for Casey later. Jenny fell silent, because in her heart, she knew I was right. I've made my decision, she said finally. And I choose exile. But I have conditions. I raised an eyebrow. You're hardly in a position to negotiate. You want me gone permanently. I can give you that, but I want regular updates on Casey. Photos, school reports, confirmation that she's happy and healthy. I want to know my daughter is thriving, even if I can't be part of her life. Agreed. Anything else? I want to know that she'll never learn the truth about me. Promise me that whatever story you tell her about why I died, it's something she can live with, something that won't destroy her memory of me. I nodded slowly. She believes you died instantly in the accident, that you didn't suffer. She believes you loved her more than anything in the world, and that your last words were about how proud you were of her. Tears started flowing down Jenny's face. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Your new identity comes with strict rules. You'll live in a small town in Montana under the name Bethany Hickman. You'll work as a bookkeeper for a family-owned business. You'll have a modest apartment and a used car. You'll never contact anyone from your old life. Never try to research Casey or me. Never attempt to return to Seattle. And if I break these rules, then evidence will surface proving that Jenny Christian wasn't killed in an accident. She faked her death as part of Wesley Stratton's embezzlement scheme. Casey will learn that her mother was a criminal who abandoned her. The insurance money will be recovered. Casey's inheritance will be frozen pending legal proceedings, and you'll spend the rest of your life in federal prison. The brutality of the trap was perfect. I had ensured that any attempt by Jenny to reclaim her old life would destroy the daughter she was trying to protect. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I always do. 3 days later, Jenny found herself in the passenger seat of Gerald Christian's pickup truck, driving through the Montana countryside toward her new life. Gerald had been silent for most of the journey, but as they neared their destination, he finally spoke. You know he still loves you, Gerald said quietly. Funny way of showing it. Marco doesn't forgive. Never has. Not since our father left. But he also doesn't hate without cause. What you did to him. What you did to Casey. It broke something in him that can't be fixed. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. Gerald glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Mistakes are forgetting anniversaries or leaving the milk out. What you did was calculated betrayal over months. There's a difference. They drove in silence until they reached Bethany Hickman's new home. A small apartment above a bookstore in a town so remote it barely appeared on maps. This is it, Gerald said, handing her a set of keys and an envelope. Your new identity, social security card, driver's license, and enough money to get started. There's a job waiting for you at the hardware store. They think you're a widow from California looking for a fresh start. Will I ever see you again? No. As far as the world is concerned, Gerald Christian helped bury his sister-in-law 2 weeks ago. Bethany Hickman has no connection to anyone named Christian. As Gerald drove away, leaving her standing on a dusty street in the middle of nowhere, Jenny realized that my revenge was complete. She was alive, but Jenny Christian was truly dead, buried in a cemetery in Seattle while her daughter mourned and her husband moved on. But she was alive, and that was more than Wesley could say from his federal prison cell. 6 months later, I stood in my Seattle office, looking out at a city that no longer held any painful memories. Wesley Stratton was sentenced to 35 years. Ivan Graham had completed his cooperation and disappeared. The insurance company had paid out Jenny's life insurance. Christian Industries was more profitable than ever, having absorbed Wesley's partnership share and eliminated the systematic theft. My net worth had actually increased since my wife's death. Casey was thriving. At 15, she'd grown into a confident, intelligent young woman. She spoke about her mother with love, but without the crushing grief that had characterized the first few months. She was getting straight A's, accepted into a summer program for gifted students. She seemed genuinely happy. Dad, are you ready for dinner? Casey asked, poking her head into my office. Almost finished here, I replied, closing the file. Good. I'm making that pasta dish Mom taught me before, she paused, the automatic reference to her mother still sometimes causing a flicker of sadness. "She'd be proud of how well you cook it," I said gently. Casey smiled. "I think so, too." As we walked to the kitchen, I reflected on how completely my life had been reconstructed. I'd eliminated every trace of betrayal, protected my daughter's future, and ensured that those who tried to destroy me were permanently neutralized. In Montana, Bethany Hickman finished her shift at Rocky Mountain Hardware and walked the 3 blocks to her small apartment. She'd lost 20 pounds. Her hair was shorter and darker, and she dressed in simple clothes that would have horrified the fashion-conscious Jenny Christian. But she was surviving. The work was honest. The town was quiet. And every month she received an unmarked envelope containing photos of Casey at school, at home, with friends, watching her daughter grow up through carefully cropped photographs that revealed nothing about my life. Casey looked happy. That was all that mattered. Bethany had tried once to research news about Seattle online. Within hours, her internet service had been cut off, and a man in a suit had appeared at her door with a reminder about the terms of her agreement. She never tried again. Some evenings she would sit on her apartment's small balcony and wonder if she could have made different choices. But those thoughts led nowhere productive. Jenny Christian had made her choices, and Bethany Hickman lived with the consequences. Meanwhile, in Seattle, I had begun dating again. Carefully, selectively. With women who understood my daughter came first, that I wasn't interested in anything casual. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to spot the warning signs I'd missed with Jenny. "You know," Gerald said during one of our monthly dinners, "you could have just divorced her. It would have been simpler." "Simpler isn't always better," I replied. "This way, Casey keeps her inheritance, her innocence, and her memories. Wesley and Ivan face actual consequences for their crimes, and I never have to worry about any of them returning to hurt my family again." "And you're okay with the fact that she's still alive out there?" I considered this. She's not alive. Jenny Christian is dead. There's a woman in Montana who looks like her, but Jenny Christian died in that car accident, just like everyone believes. That's a very clinical way of looking at it. I'm a clinical person. It served me well. As the months turned into years, the story of Marco Christian's tragic loss became just another piece of Seattle business folklore. The successful entrepreneur who'd lost his wife discovered his business partner's betrayal, but emerged stronger than ever while raising his daughter alone. Casey graduated high school as valedictorian and was accepted to Stanford with a full scholarship. She decided to study business, wanting to eventually join my company. "I want to build on what you and Mom started," she told me during her graduation party. She'd be incredibly proud, I said, and meant it. In Montana, Bethany Hickman read about Casey's graduation in the newspaper clipping that arrived with her monthly photos. She cried for hours. Tears of pride, grief, and acceptance all mixed together. Her daughter was successful, happy, and loved. That had to be enough. My revenge was complete. Not because I destroyed my enemies, but because I'd built something better from the wreckage they'd tried to create. Casey would inherit an empire, never knowing her mother had tried to steal it. Wesley would spend his best years in prison, never knowing the woman he'd loved was still alive. And Jenny would spend her life watching from a distance as the family she'd abandoned thrived without her. It was, I reflected, perfect justice. Not mercy, not forgiveness, but perfect, inescapable justice. And for a man who'd learned at 12 years old that the world was cruel and unforgiving, perfect justice was the only victory that mattered. 5 years after Jenny Christian's death, I stood at my daughter's college graduation, watching Casey accept her business degree with honors. She was beautiful, brilliant, and completely innocent of the darkness that had once threatened to destroy our family. In the audience, I noticed a woman with short dark hair watching from the back row, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap. For just a moment, our eyes met across the crowded auditorium. Bethany Hickman had broken the rules one last time, traveling across the country to see her daughter graduate. It was a risk that could destroy everything, but she had to see Casey's triumph with her own eyes. I could have had her arrested, could have exposed everything, and destroyed Casey's image of her mother forever. Instead, I simply nodded once, an acknowledgement that this moment belonged to both of us, regardless of everything that had come between us. Then, Casey was walking across the stage, accepting her diploma, and the moment passed. When I looked back, the woman in the baseball cap was gone. Later that evening, as Casey celebrated with her friends, I received a single text message from an unknown number. "Thank you." I deleted it immediately and never heard from Bethany Hickman again. I had one completely, but I'd also learned that even perfect revenge could contain moments of imperfect mercy. It was perhaps the only lesson Jenny had left to teach me. The war was over. The victory was total. And somewhere in Montana, a woman who had once been my wife was learning to live with the consequences of betraying the one man who never forgave and never forgot. But their daughter would never know any of this. Casey Christian would inherit everything, believing her parents had loved each other, and that her mother had died believing in her daughter's potential. In the end, that was the only victory that truly mattered.